by Lorgathon's Ghost, a story by Jerk Douglas. Music and soundtrack by Adrian von Ziegler. The fairy fops billowed in the hazel woods. Blue shadows tiddled beneath the waving leafery of the elvish canopy. The sparkling sun cut through in delicate beams, striking the bright flowers and causing a rainbow of colours to burn to life. A young elfman of a spry 90 years emerged from the forest he called his home into the bright midday sun of a glowing green grassland, the dominion of man. His name was Brel. Long and statuesque, he wore a gold circlet which denoted his nobility and contrasted his hair of rich, deep Barcan hue. His fine linen raiments flopped and faddled in the gushing breeze. His ventures had never put him away from his home before, but seeing the wide-open sky in front of him, he knew adventure was nigh. "By Lorgathon's Ghost, I'll make a name for myself," said he. The only one to hear him was a goat who stood mouthing over a flowering bush, smacking its sauntering lips in deft satisfaction. Brel sat out across the green to a small settlement that was visible in the distance. All about him were white rocks smattered across the countryside, as though the many gods had placed them as decoration. Brel knew better, however. God worship was for fools and morons and the brainless kvetch who lived in the idiot bog. Mentally sound in his strong atheism, the scenery passed by him until suddenly he was at the gate of the aforementioned town. The buildings were marvelous, bending to seemingly random degrees with every progressive story upward. Some had spinning doodads affixed to the roofs. Some appeared to house multiple pinwheels made of canvas and wood. They would swing and waddle to catch the headwind that tore through these spacious lands. The people were a sight as well, those like he and those not. Humans indeed looked quite silly with their ergonomic, unembellished ears. He wondered how many earrings they could support. Not many, I suppose. Several gnomes passed by underfoot. They were boggling over the plans for a contraption and weren't paying attention to anyone around them. As he looked around, he noticed there were a distinct lack of washing fountains. In his homeland, the washing of one is a sacred and frequent act. Showing the slightest smudge of dirt on one's complexion was pure hobery. It was best to clean oneself or be thrown in the wash brig, where angry maids with soapy brushes would batter and grate your tender, fair elvish skin. Now that Brel thought about it, the elven disciplinary system largely circulated around you being scrubbed at by angry maids. But by Lorgathon's Ghost, that wasn't the law here. Everyone seemed to be some degree of filthy. One particularly oblivious-looking man had an entire clump of mud stuck to the side of his head. Brel shrunk his figure this way and that to avoid brushing the dirty people walking around, but like orcish bingle balls, they ceaselessly knocked into him and streaked his beautiful garments. After tiring of being butted around by ruffians, he turned to a tavern. He thought how he'd love a glass of fine elvenish mead right now, with a string of dodo berries to pluck, as he sat in a comfortable hammock in a quiet corner. His journey had been long, and his mind was weary. Opening the door, however, he found himself at odds with a slobbering, distemperate mob. Every table was filled, and the stink of workmen was dizzying. The bartender bellowed, "Close the damn door! We likes us the dark and dreary!" Brel jumped forward at the booming directive, and the door swung shut behind him. Everyone laughed for some seconds, and then returned to their dirty, common tasks. Brel feared there would be no quiet here, but this was a journey of adventure, and he felt that a headlong dive into a distasteful surrounding would be good for him. He noodled his way to the bartender, a rusty sack of a man. His wrinkled, pitted skin roasted to a garish brown. His beard was froofy and unkempt. "Sir, might I have your finest mead?" Brel worked himself up to say. "We ain't got mead," he grumbled back. "We got, well, I don't know what we got, but you drink it and it gets you drunk." Brel redoubled his courage. "Then I'll take it." He threw 2 silver pieces into the barman's money pot, and they landed with a curious splashing sound. "That's the spittoon, you idiot!" The barman hacked at him. "Now you reach in there and you get 'em out." Brel's adventure sense had its limits. He took 2 more silver pieces out and placed them on the counter. The bartender saw what exactly Brell had offered, and his eyes bugged out of his head, and his hand quickly shot out to cover the coins. "Are ye crazy? Someone sees you flash this, and you'll be face down in a woggle ditch tomorrow." Brell hadn't thought about just how poor other people who weren't him were. "Then how much is it?" "Scrap a copper. This'd buy the whole tavern 10 times over." "Well, keep it, for the advice." The elves didn't trade in copper. They found it ugly and unfashionable. The bartender's face pulled into a horrible smile, 3 teeth, all black. Brell's stomach turned as he feigned appreciation. The barman quickly yanked the spittoon down and fished the other 2 coins out and pocketed them without any of the drunks at the bar noticing. Then, wiping his slimy hand on his shirt, he said, "So what brings a fancy lad like yourself to the common lands?" Brell was eager to relay his story, but he realized that he didn't have one yet, so he simply proclaimed, "I seek an adventure." The bartender laughed, and he did not stop laughing. Brell became angry about 10 seconds into the snorting, howling barrage. Then the dirty old toad stopped himself, having finally grown a conscience on the matter. "Gonna slay a dragon, are ye?" Brell didn't want to respond because he thought it might prompt more laughter. He was probably right. "Well, my uncle said you have to start somewhere." The bartender stifled another giggle, but conceded to the request. "You just said it like a squip, that's all. If you're so desperate to get chewed up, there's a wizard at the dog's end of town. He's always looking for fine young idiots to gather him ingredients. You'll probably get eaten by a grue, but that's the best I can figure." The barman shoved a mug of some foul-smelling swill into Brell's hands. "Now move along, lad. A lot of drunks here to serve." Brell paced away from the bar with a new, strange feeling of exhilaration. It was little more than doing a chore for a wizard, but he had heard tell that their chores often involved travels and danger and beasts and damsels. He was about to carry on pre-writing his new life story when something caught his eye. Out of the dank, mouldy interior came a flash of gold hair that lit up the room for an instant. He took a few steps closer to find a knot of gnomes being regaled by a glowing young elf girl. She looked to only be about 60, but most notably, he was transfixed by her abnormally full, taut hindquarters, framed by well-fitted leather trousers that shined her every curve in perfect sphericality. The women of Elvenmore were elegant and lovely, of course, but frumpy and devoid of dimension. This young woman was all smiles and proportions. How could this be? While considering the task of speaking to her, his hands grew possessed. He started to sweat. Never had such power emanated from a single piece of anatomy. He weighed his options. He could pinch her bottom once to check for consistency, or he could attempt to build a rapport and romantically engage her for the rites. As a noble, his genetics proved him to be the most handsome. She could respond kindly to that, but a product of both royal and military training, his swiftness and poise were unmatched. He could wait until a drunk wandered by and sneak a full, confident grip on her bottom, leaving the mark to fetch the blame while he maintained inconspicuousness. His mind raced, and his dreams of adventure seemed petty and childish now. Nothing mattered except for this girl's bottom. She was fully distracted by herself, speaking in an animated fashion to the gnomes about nothing interesting enough to be recounting here. But Brell felt as though we were at a crossroads in his life. Now he wanted to use both hands. Only using one hand would be an outright denial of this bounty that the many gods had placed in this world. His strong atheist beliefs faded, and he began searching for a patron that might help him sate this dire, immediate need. 2 hands would be nearly impossible to misdirect unless he feigned collision between them, which only a troll would be dumb enough to accept. He thought for all the magic spells he knew, thinking one of them might create a flash or a noise or something so distracting that getting groped wouldn't rouse her attention. But the elves didn't develop magic for the sake of degenerate perverts. Brell's sweating intensified. He could hardly break his eyes from the magnificence that laid before him. The clouds forming in his mind obscured an irrational decision. He began to chew on his lip. His hands were shaking. The girl was still enamored, but a few of the outlying gnomes noticed his intention and started egging him on silently with subtle raised thumbs. Fully admitting this was the worst decision he had ever made in his entire life, he committed the act. Devil may care. His long, spidery fingers instantly found every point spanning the impressive landscape of her rear, and he squeezed. Oh, did he squeeze! His very soul burst into a comfortable simmer. The disgusting brown hall became a field of flowers. A chorus of angels could be heard all around. He had become changed. When he came to from his elation, he had been thrown out of the bar onto his face. The outside world was truly a wondrous place. Hey there everybody, this is Jerk Douglas. That was original artwork by me, video taken by me. I have a Tumblr, it should be in the description. All the music was made by Adrian Von Ziegler. I'll have a link to his account in the description also. Have a nice day, thanks for watching!